my husband is in a cult. Story time. I met Zach a few years ago and he chose to propose marriage just 3 months into our dating. I was comfortable with this because Zach was the only man who suited everything I wanted. Personally, I wanted a man who was very financially stable and doing very fine for himself. And also, since I was very advanced in age at this point, I was 35. I wanted someone who didn't want kids just like me because I didn't want to put myself under any health risks of bearing children quite late in my life. So Zach fitted all my qualities, and when he proposed, I felt ready for it. And anyway, I had been looking for marriage for the longest time. Let me give you a snippet of who Zach is. Zach is a tall and very charming man. Everyone basically falls in love with him because he's got this charm as he walks around. You know those people who are just likable by everyone? Zach is that. When I took Zach to my parents to meet them, everyone loved him. So personally, I had no problem with it, and I didn't really tell anyone that I was only dating Zach for 3 months. Seeing the setup that I grew up in, how long you knew your husband for or your potential partner for always was directly correlated with how well your marriage will go or how well you might see the red flags. So for me, I was really embarrassed to tell anyone that I was seeing Zach for only 3 months and I was ready to get married to him. So I did it without anyone knowing. And whenever someone asked, I always said he was a guy that I used to talk to online, but he recently moved to Lusaka. So this is when we started meeting in person. But everyone thought that I had been seeing Zach for a while. The reason for wanting a rich man wasn't because I was poor. I'm actually very financially stable and I'm working a very well-paying job. But I noticed that as I was dating guys who were broke, when they started to do fine, they would leave me for other girls. So I chose to date someone who was already doing fine, and I thought they would not leave me for anyone else. At least that's how I comforted myself. So Zach was very perfect because all the guys that I had dated before him left me when they started doing better. My husband runs businesses around the country that are doing very fine, so I had no reasons to suspect that he had anything else going on. And for sure, I could see that his shops were doing fine. I would go there and monitor them. They are doing fine and they generate quite a good amount of profit, and it's equivalent to the life that Zach provides me with. I felt like I could trust Zach with my life, so I wasn't really nosy into his business. Only the few times that he would tell me to go check the shops for him when he was busy, then I would do that. But I could say that Zach had a few unexplained trips. I couldn't attribute them to anything weird because his trips were always explained to me. He would tell me he was going somewhere, so I never had any reasons to suspect otherwise. During our dating period, Zach was very open and he would let me reach at his place where he was staying alone, but mostly he would complain how he wanted us to move after getting married because he thought weird things were happening in this house. His only example was always how he felt like there was a big bird on the roof scratching its claws on the roof. Like he could hear noises of claws of a bird, and the bird seemed quite big. So for me, since his house was just close to some trees, like those houses that are in a yard where there are a lot of trees, so I thought it's the birds that used to sit in the trees that he used to hear. But he was always adamant on the fact that it's not just the birds, it's something very weird. So honestly, I had no problem with moving, and since we're a new couple, it was even better if we're going to have our own apartment that we're going to furnish together, so that I could also include my own style in the apartment. So when he suggested that we move, I was very okay with it, but I didn't believe that there was really something weird happening in that house. After having the biggest wedding that I've ever imagined, we did move like Zach suggested, and our house was pretty decent. I really loved it. I was able to add my own taste to it, just everything that every woman would have ever wanted in her home. Zach was able to get it for me. Honestly, I was very happily married to Zach. Our marriage has had no issues from the time that it started till now. Everything has been perfect with regards to our relationship between the two of us. We've had our issues, but Zach is a very good man. One night while asleep after moving to our new house, Zach woke me up claiming that he was hearing the same sound that he used to hear at his old house. When I woke up, I couldn't hear anything, so I thought he was just joking because it used to be a joke of ours that I would make fun of him, of his old house and how he was scared. So I thought he was doing the same to me, but he seemed very scared and quite serious. So he told me to keep quiet and listen for the sound, and for sure I could hear some scratching noises, but it wasn't too serious that I should get scared. So I chose to ignore it and just encouraged him to go to sleep, and that night we did sleep. The following morning, Zach continued the conversation and told me that I need to start going to church because we weren't really church goers, both Zach and I. We actually met at the mall. He encouraged that we should both start going to church, but since he has to monitor his shops and do some stock taking on Sundays, I should be the one to go to church more than him. And obviously we know women are usually the ones who go to church in these homes, at least in most homes. So I was okay with it since his excuse was genuine, that he was usually busy with his shop, and it is true because I was able to prove it that most of the time he'll be at his shop. I agreed that I could be going to church, and I did start going to church. Eventually, I started enjoying church, and I started to include him in our prayers with my pastor, because him thinking that there's something on the roof never stopped. So I started including him in prayers, and the pastor would say everything would be fine eventually, we just had to pray. One day, actually, the pastor came home and he anointed the house with a mixture of coarse salt and water, and he sprinkled it around the house. Something like that. The day that the pastor came home to do the salt and water thing, it was impromptu, so my husband was not aware. But then when we got home, I was shocked to see Zach's call, and he was asking me, who's that in the house? What is he doing? I thought it was a genuine concern, but I was also wondering, how did he know? So he let me know that he was able to see me on the CCTVs. But what was weird is the fact that on our phones, we can only access the CCTV footage when we have Wi-Fi. But on that day, Wi-Fi was down because we had not yet subscribed again. So I thought it was weird, but I didn't think much of it. And he requested that the pastor should leave, and he's tired of seeing the stories on Facebook where pastors would sleep with people's wives. So he's not comfortable that the pastor is home while he's not around. I understood, but the pastor had already concluded whatever he was doing, so I told him politely to leave. Zach came back home. He was not upset, but I could tell that night became very uneasy for Zach. He kept on turning and tossing at night. So in my assumption, I thought he was probably hearing those things that he used to hear on the roof, but I couldn't hear them, so I knew that wasn't it. Eventually, he managed to fall asleep, and I also fell asleep because I was worried for him, so I waited for him to fall asleep for me to sleep. When he slept, I started hearing the noises now. Ideally, Zach would hear the noises first, but this night was different. I heard the noises first, and what was weird is I couldn't see Zach on the other side of the bed. So I chose to rush around the house to see where he was and ask if he was hearing the noise, because this was our routine. The different thing is that the tone of this sound was very distinct, and to an extent it felt like I was hearing my husband's voice, but whatever he was saying was not making sense. So I thought he was probably sleepwalking or something, or I was just hearing the wrong thing altogether. So when I went to check, I found Zach in the sitting room in a very weird position. Actually, let's hold on to that detail before I explain what I saw. On most Saturdays, Zach would request that I leave the house because he wanted to spend time with the guys, and he asked that I go out with the girls, which Zach typically didn't want me going out. But on Saturdays, he would make sure that I was out with the girls, and he would give me so much money so that I spend with my friends and I should be out the whole day. On one Saturday, I walked back home because I had forgotten my purse. When I got back home, I found Zach with his friends dressed in the same attire that I saw the night that Zach was in the sitting room saying weird things. That day, Zach was very upset with me when I got back home. But anyway, he let it go and told me to go out again, that he didn't want me home until he told me to do so. So the night that I found Zach in the sitting room, he was bowed down, facing the ground, with his whole back, like he was almost laying down but bowing. He was wearing a certain red bubu, which was weird, which are the same clothes that his friends were wearing. But that day he explained to me that they were having a bubu party with his friends, which was trending at that time. So it was for the guys, and they were wearing the same kind of bubu. But this bubu was red. It didn't seem very weird, but it was still weird that it was red, and he was praying and bowing down to something with candles lit around him. I chose to call his name because I thought something weird was happening with him. I was genuinely worried. When I called his name, Zach did come up. He sat, I don't know how to demonstrate it, but where you sit and your feet are towards your bum, yeah, sitting like that. He turned to where I was, which was by the door side, because I couldn't even enter the sitting room. I was very scared. He turned to me, and I couldn't see the black part of his eye. All I could see was the sclera, which is the white part. And everything from that time just went black for me. It's like my head literally switched off in that moment. I saw Zach and I was extremely scared. I honestly thought he was having a seizure or something, but since seizures are not something that Zach has, it was almost as if what was happening was unexplainable. So I tried to call his name again, and his eyes were still turned up, which was very weird. I chose to run out and go to the bedroom and maybe try to dial a number like maybe 911 or the hospital, just something, so that he could get the help that he needed, because I thought he needed help. But when I came back to the sitting room, he had gone back to that position, and it seemed like he was worshipping something that was on a picture he was holding. This time I was able to see it clearly because I really wanted to get help for my husband. The next day, Zach came back to the bedroom. That night, I don't think he came back to the room because I had locked it. I was very scared of even Zach himself. When he came back to the bedroom, he got ready for work and his businesses. He went about his businesses. I went to work, and from that day, we've never discussed what happened. But that left me traumatized. I can't function in my home anymore. I feel like I want to leave. It's like the money that Zach has is not normal, and probably he's getting it from some sort of a god or a cult. I don't know if these things are real, but this is what I think. What would you do in that situation? Because I'm about to be out of the door.